Welcome to Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Carl Gronberg. I'm host for the program, and I'd like to talk to you about how the faith is passed down from parents to children. On this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue, we're going to have people with us who help us to understand that we learn the faith by doing. Stay with us on Austin Faith Dialogue.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
As a clergy person in the Austin community, one of the questions often posed to me by very interested and concerned parents is, how might I ensure that my children will carry on the faith? And for many of you in your faith communities, what you're doing now is starting a fall new term of studying together as parents and children within your faith communities. On Austin Faith Dialogue today, I'd like you to meet two people who can assist you in that process of teaching your children. Linda Traurig is here. She is co-director of Faith Home. And Will McDonald. Will is a volunteer at Austin at Faith Home in Austin, Texas. Will, you almost got me confused there when I was interrupting you, because when I saw you today at Faith Home, you really made an impact upon me. You were holding the hand of a sweetheart, and you were communicating with her. Will, tell our viewing audience, what were you doing at Faith Home today?
Well, I just went in and talked to this very sweet baby, but I don't give her anything. She gives me everything. I can't wait to see her. I get my strength from her. She gives nothing from me.
Yeah.
But a little conversation and some hand-holding.
Linda, what do you think? Would you agree with what Will is saying?
No, I think it's a two-way street.
Uh-huh.
The volunteers give the children the extra attention and love, and the children do give a lot back.
Well, people who are watching Austin Faith Dialogue are saying, now what's this Faith Home, and what does this have to do with learning the faith and sharing it with our kids, our children? What is Faith Home, Linda?
It's a residential facility for babies and children that are HIV infected or have AIDS, and children with catastrophic illness.
Mm-hmm. And you, your husband, in 1988 decided to, well, you had a call from God, is what you told me, that you decided to do something for those children who have HIV/AIDS. Tell us about that.
Okay. It actually started in the early 80s that I was working as a nurse and began to have a strong feeling that God wanted me to do something else with my nursing skills. And I prayed on it. Wasn't getting a lot of answers. I prayed for probably 3 years, feeling that calling. My husband and I feel very strongly that our lives have to be led along whatever path that God asks us to move. My husband's Jewish, I'm Catholic. So from the very, very start, before we even got married, I had to do a lot of talking and discussing about religion and what our beliefs were and how we were going to pool these two religions and honor both of them in our marriage. Our children were raised to understanding both religions. So therefore, when we began to feel a call to do something, we're trying to be very open with it. And it wasn't until 1985 and my prayers for guidance were getting kind of frustrating. It was like, okay, write it in the sky, send me do something. I need to know. I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do. Just give me a clue. And that day, my husband and I had done a pre-marriage workshop. And on the way out, one of the participants asked me if I was going to a lecture that evening with Dr. Kubler-Ross, and she's the lady that started the hospice and dealing with death and dying issues in the country, and she was going to be in Austin that evening. and I hadn't known about the meeting. So when I got home, I called the sponsor, and they said, "Oh, we've been sold out for over a year." And I really kind of bugged the person and made a nuisance of myself. And I think she only took my phone number down to get me off the phone. And
Persistent.
And so, yes. And annoying is probably what she was thinking. And I hung up the phone and I said, "Okay, God, if this is something that we need to be at, you work it out, because I wasn't able to." And I started fixing supper, and about 10 minutes later the phone rang and the lady said, "I don't believe it, but we just had 2 cancellations. And if you meet me at the front door, I'll give you the tickets." So I dragged my husband. My husband was like, "Oh, I'm really tired."
God works in strange and mysterious ways.
And I said, so I said to him, "I think if you don't get up off that chair and come," after he went to the trouble of getting you the tickets. So we went, and Dr. Kubler-Ross talked about death and dying issues. But then she talked about the fact that in New York City, they were starting to have babies born who were very, very sick and dying, and that there was this doctor in New York who insisted that these babies had AIDS. And everybody told him that wasn't possible, that only gay men got that. And anyway, we walked out of her lecture, and in the parking lot, I looked at my husband and I said, "That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to take care of AIDS babies." And then my very first thought was like, "Oh God, don't make me move back to New York."
Yeah, right. Let me stay where I am, right?
Yes, I'll take care of the babies, but don't make me move back there. And so then we had to get busy and find out. It was very difficult to find any information at all. And it was like over a year later that I went to my first nursing conference on children with AIDS to find out what it was like.
See, I think here is the lessons, or some of the lessons, that we can help our children learn and pass it from one generation to the next. First of all, that God is involved in our lives, and that God wants to give encouragement, direction, never force it, but ask us to be involved in that whole process of being open to God's will. I think that's a great lesson that you've given witness to in Austin Faith Dialogue. And the second thing is that be ready for surprises. You don't, you really don't.
That has a great sense of humor.
Yeah, what surprises we'll have. And Will, that brings me to you. You're a retired Army man, is that right?
Right.
Your career was in the military.
Right, in the Army.
And then does it surprise you at all that you find yourself volunteering at a place that is focused on babies and children who
Well,
have
no,
AIDS?
I've got 10 children and 29 grandchildren, and I like reading to my children. And I just saw a little ad in our church bulletin one Sunday about Faith Home, and I called, and I got Linda, which is pretty miraculous because you don't get Linda when you call. And she answered the phone, and I said, "I'd like to know anyway." She said, "The training isn't for a couple of weeks," but I said, "Let me drive out there so I can find the place." And I found the place, and she put me to work. And I just wanted to rock babies and read. There was nothing complicated about it. And the babies are all too big to be rocked at that time. And the kids are pretty hyper. And I didn't get to do a lot of reading. And then I found Danny and fell in love. And so for the last year and a half, I just go in and spend an hour or two a week holding Danny's hand.
And that's what I saw you doing today. When I came to Faith Home, you were holding Danny's hand and conveying and sharing with her. And I think that's another one of the lessons that we want to be able to share with our children. It's that lesson of worth and value for every human being. How old is Danny?
She's about 6, and she's big for her age. She's very big for her age. But you might tell them something about Linda, about her actual physical condition.
Yeah, Linda, tell us about Danny. Would you be able to do that?
She was born to a mother that had AIDS, but most of Danny's physical problems are from drug exposure. She was born positive for heroin, cocaine, marijuana, LSD, speed. She had 5 sexually transmitted diseases, TB, hepatitis. So her brain was pretty wiped out by all of the drugs and stuff. And so they tell us that she functions at a newborn level, which isn't true. She has incredibly sophisticated taste in music, and loves classical music, and loves opera. And
She loves Bach. Is she the one
Bach,
that? Yeah.
yes, yes.
That's amazing.
And her,
And she loves Will.
And she'll tell you, and she'll tell you which CDs she wants to listen to by blinking her eyes real fast. So she's in a wheelchair. She has cerebral palsy. She's blind, and she has to wear braces on her legs. She's tube fed.
But when I was there watching Will hold Danny's hand today, there was a smile on her face, and there was a sense of peace. And I think probably one of the most important religious lessons that we could give our children would be the sense of relationship between two human beings who appreciate one another. And I think that's something that Faith Home is able to teach. You mentioned that you heard that lecture, you heard about babies in New York City, and you said to your husband, this is where we're supposed to do ministry. Well, then what happened? That was 85. When did you actually start doing that type of ministry?
Well, first we had to find information about the children. That in itself took over a year. And then we started the process of being licensed to operate a child care facility in Texas. But nobody had been licensed before to run a home for children with AIDS. So
you were trailblazers then, weren't you?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
No one in the entire state of Texas had been licensed for that? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Oh, that's amazing.
So the state said, okay, well, this is what we need. In the way of policies, we don't have those. So I would research it from different places in the country. There were only 5 places in the entire United States then that were doing that.
It's amazing.
And then write a paper on what the policy should be and why it should be and submit it. And I said, it's the only time I ever understood why we wrote all those papers in high school and college. That's all I did then. And it was not, it took until 88 to be licensed.
To be ready to go.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to continue our discussion with Linda and Will about how we share the faith with our children. And our children are not only those within our family, but they're also our children at Faith Home. Please stay with us on Austin Faith Dialogue. Like your pastor or rabbi or priest, I receive lots of mail. And a letter that caught my attention was this one. It came from Faith Home for babies and children with HIV and AIDS. And it said, hard to believe fall is just around the corner. Are you planning for your youth ministry program? We at Faith Home would like to be a part of your program and outreach to the community. That's what we're talking about in Austin Faith Dialogue today. We're inviting you to teach the children entrusted to all of you as parents and as religious leaders the importance of respect for people and the importance of sharing God's love with all people. And Linda, thanks again for being with us in Austin Faith Dialogue. During the break, we were talking about some of your immediate family. Now, Will said he has 10 children. What a wife he has. Boy, I'm amazed. 10 children. And 29 grandchildren, right? We want to give credit to all those children and grandchildren. Linda, how about you and Hai? Now, you mentioned you're raised Roman Catholic. Hai was raised Jewish, and that you lived out the faith and shared both faiths with your children. What about your children and how you shared the faith with them? Because were they growing up during this process?
By the time we started Faith Home, one was in college, the other two were in high school. So they were very much.
What did your children think about all of this? As mom and dad were talking about sharing their love for people through this ministry.
Yeah. Well, both of our grown daughters have worked at Faith Home at times, so that speaks real well. And our volunteer coordinator right now is our oldest daughter.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. If, for instance, priests or rabbis, people from mosques in our community, or pastors, ministers, if they would want their youth to be able to know about Faith Home or see what goes on at Faith Home, how could they help teach them? What kind of volunteers do you have at Faith Home? Besides Will.
We've had literally thousands of volunteers in the past, people that come and spend time with the children. We have some wonderful volunteers who come and fix supper in the evening. We have a church group that's their mission for this year, is to fix dinner for the children one night a week, and that's wonderful.
What do they like to eat? What the children eat?
The children, well, we're all vegetarians in that we do eat chicken and turkey, but we don't eat beef or pork. And lots and lots of vegetables.
So if people come in and provide a meal for you from the various congregations of our community, they have to keep in mind that you would prefer a vegetarian meal.
Yeah. In fact, they come in for an orientation and on what the different aspects and what dietary rules we follow. The children get very little sugar. Almost all of our children, in addition to being HIV children, are also crack babies. And so that means that they're hyperactive, ADHD, which is hyperactive. And so we need volunteers to chase them around.
You got a lot of energy.
Young volunteers with lots of energy.
Lots of energy.
Yeah.
You mentioned there was a call. You sensed a call from God to be involved in this. You are a pediatric nurse. You have skills and credentials, but that you sense a spiritual part of your call to be about this type of ministry. When you and Hai selected the name for this ministry, you called it Faith Home. Was there any particular reason why you decided to call it Faith Home?
Several good reasons. I mean, we prayed for 3 days on what the name of the home should be, and the initials in faith, we feel stand for all infants to teens with HIV.
F-A-I-T-H, for all infants, teens.
With HIV.
And
wow. Plus, it took a lot of faith to get it started. In order to get it started, Hai and I quit our jobs and took out all our retirement money to get the program on its feet. That takes a lot of faith. God provides, has always provided what we needed to meet the needs of the children. And each time another one, we've had 40 babies come so far, and each time another one comes, there again has to be that faith that you can provide what that child needs, and that God will make sure that it works out.
You know, I want you to apologize to all those beautiful little children. Let me see, I saw David and Ashley and Danny and Brandon. And when you go back and you tell them you're a TV star in Austin Faith Dialogue, Will, you tell them the pastor just goofed up, because if I'd gotten their pictures here early enough, we could have shown the viewing audience these marvelous, beautiful children. They are just, there's something else to walk through there and see. They do have activity and energy, but I don't know, a child that usually doesn't have that kind. That's good. That's a very good sign. Will, how long have you been volunteering? You came there to read, you said, and to...
Read and rock babies, and I ran out of babies and couldn't find anybody to read to, so I've just been with Danny about 18 months, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah. What's been the experience for you? I know that it touches you emotionally, but spiritually, what do you sense when you're about this?
Well, a great sense of humility. I think, why did I have so many beautiful, healthy children? And you know, it's very humbling, and it's very satisfying. I can hold Danny's hand, and I can just feel the energy running up my arm. And it's really, but tell them about the Chinese mission. That's the
That's a great story. Yeah, that's important.
Faith Home has been adopted as a foreign mission by a Buddhist missionary group out of China.
And what does that mean, that you've been adopted by this Buddhist group in China?
Well, it's just as the churches here have missions, maybe in South America or something, that they send resources to and help to support. We have been adopted by this missionary group whose home base is in China. And they came here and looked at different programs that they wanted to funnel their resources to.
Tremendous.
And picked Faith Home. I love it. I love it.
And you actually received some financial help from them?
Yes, they send us a check every month and
that assists you in your ministry?
send people once a year to come and see how things are going. And
that is wonderful.
it's just incredible.
That is a great story.
know.
And truly it's ecumenical then, Will, isn't it? Because
yeah.
you have the Jewish emphasis, you have the Roman Catholic, the Christian emphasis, and then you have the Buddhists being involved. I would like you to tell a story about any one of the children that has come to you, and how they've developed when they've been at Faith Home. Is there one particular story that you said there have been 40 children
40
since
children.
1988? Is there one of those children that you could tell our viewing audience about?
There's so many.
Skylar.
I saw Skylar today.
Let's see.
Yeah.
This was a baby that came to us at 4 months of age, very, very sick, very wasted away. Was so stressed out from drugs that couldn't tolerate being held and rocked. In fact, for a while, the pediatrician had us sedate him before we would get him out of bed and try to rock him to just help him learn to tolerate it. He was attached to oxygen and feeding tubes and on a special piece of medical equipment that kept him at a 45-degree angle, and was given a 0 chance of making his first birthday. And through we have wonderful, wonderful child care staff. And through everybody's devotion to this child and working with him, he finally started to respond developmentally, started putting on weight, and is now a 3-year-old running around the house.
Chubby boy.
Chubby 3-year-old. Yes, we were like, he maybe needs to go on a diet. He's getting really heavy to pick up. He started school this year, and everybody, all of the judges and doctors and everybody went, school? He's in school? And we're like, yeah. And they're like, who would have believed? The neurologist was like, well, can he sit up yet? I'm like, well.
So what you're saying is that literally, Will, miracles are taking place there.
This Skylar is supposed to be on one of these feeding tubes. Well, he is. That's what's in the backpack. He's got a backpack that's got his feeding tube in it, and he wakes up from his nap, grabs his pack, and takes off like a scalded dog, as they say.
And what I understand, that these children are going to school then. You have 9
Right.
presently, and matter of fact, tonight you're receiving a 10th, is that right?
Yeah, we have a new baby coming.
A little
tonight.
baby's coming, a little baby boy is coming. Now, those older ones, they go off to school, and they range in age from the little one that's coming is just an infant,
Right.
And then the oldest would be?
Is 12. 12. So we have 8 children in 5 different schools this year.
8 of them are in 5 different schools. And they're both in public and parochial schools.
Right.
And depending upon what their needs are. All right.
Yeah. But it's the really, really fun thing at Faith Home is to get in these just incredibly sick babies with just horrible prognosis, and then watch the volunteers and the child care staff and people start working with them and watch the miracle.
Yes.
Yeah. And
What-
we see it time.
Well, what is that miracle? What takes place? If children, youngsters, teenagers would come to volunteer at Faith Home, what is the miracle they would see?
It's like what's like watching a time release of a flower blooming when you one of these things you see on the Discovery Channel, time lapse because it's incredible. And when I first went to work, we had a couple of girls there who had a full-time load at UT, and they were coming over getting 2 or 3 of the kids dressed every morning. They were getting Danny dressed. Now she has to be diapered and everything else, and they would do all that and then go off to school.
Yeah, beautiful. They're living the faith, aren't they, Will?
They sure are.
What will they learn when they come? What will they learn about faith and religion and God if they would come and volunteer at Faith Home? What do you think, Linda?
Where you learn that love really does produce miracles in the children, and it's really God's work. I mean, we're not doing anything except what He's asking us to do, which is open your hearts and provide these children with, a good family life, include God in your family life, and give these kids love and let them go.
You know what I think is amazing? I've not heard anything about judgment from you. You've not judged the mothers of these children or anything that's happened in the past. What I've heard you say is that we take them the way they are and we share love with them. Linda, thanks. God bless you as you continue to do this work. We really are proud of you and grateful. And Will, you're an amazing man. Keep stroking and holding Danny's hand, and we'll be thinking of you. And you do not only Faith Home, you do a lot of other good things in our community. And I started the program by inviting you to learn the lessons of teaching your children. And one way we as parents and adults teach our children is by reminding them that there is faith, hope, and love in this world. But the greatest of all of God's gifts is the gift of love. And if your children learn that, then they'll grow in faith. Thank you for being with us on Austin Faith Dialogue. Peace be with you now and those you love. Continue to learn and do with your children.